As sincere inquirers into the highest human potentialities, we may feel that we're being presented with a choice. Whether in the pursuit of happiness, it is best to wholeheartedly try to get what we want, or to practice giving up desires, which seems to be the example set by some of the great teachers of humanity. I'd like to begin today by reflecting on this question from the perspective of the non-dual teachings. The first thing I would like to be clear about is that happiness is the goal. We are meant to be happy. True teachings are there to help us in this. To be a really happy person is a great and perhaps quite rare human achievement. Our pursuit of happiness is sometimes inhibited by fear of failure. But I'd like to suggest that we can and should be truly ambitious when it comes to happiness. And in this, the outcome is very much in our own hands. The second point to recognize from the start is that it is natural and inevitable for us to have desires. At the root of all desires is that fundamental desire to be happy, to be entirely free of desires while living in this world is neither realistic nor necessary. So is there anything fundamentally wrong with desire? Is there? It's only that to have a desire implies that we're not yet fully happy, that in some way we feel incomplete and lacking. The ultimate message of the non-dual teachings and the root of all authentic wisdom traditions is that ultimately we are not incomplete or wanting in any way, and in fact never have been. Our highest self is in truth at one with the Supreme Being, perfect, invulnerable, beyond all limitations and suffering. Even the desire to realize this truth of our own nature is in a sense misplaced, as it arises from the conviction that we are somehow separated from that truth. And this starting point is ultimately a distorted view. It is in this sense that the great teachers of humanity look on desire as based on a misconception, which can be entirely dispelled through deeper self-knowledge. This then is the standpoint of those who have awakened to the highest reality, the view, so to speak, from the summit of wisdom. Still, the non-dual teachings fully recognize that for many of us, most of the time, the experience is of being very much affected and limited by all the joys and sorrows, well-being and hardship that the mind and body are exposed to. When this is where we find ourselves, it may seem that we are indeed presented with that choice. Whether our best chance of finding happiness is by wholeheartedly pursuing the satisfaction of immediate, tangible wants, or by exercising self-restraint and endurance in pursuit of the ultimate but apparently distant goal of inner illumination. Friends, We do not have to make choices and decisions. Friends, of course, we do have to make choices and decisions. And choosing one thing may mean letting go of another. Yet the teaching is that learning how to be happy in the here and now is an essential part of the path to enlightenment, not an alternative to it. The teachings don't just tell us that we have to learn to be happy amidst the flux of life, they actually help us to be so. How? First, let us ask, what is happiness? What makes us happy? We may provisionally say that there are three forms or sources of happiness. There is happiness associated with having. There's happiness connected with doing. There's happiness related to being. It is certain that one kind of happiness is what we feel when we have something we really like. Most intense is how we feel at the moment of getting what we want. We're all familiar with this kind of experience, and we also know well that such happiness tends to pass quickly. Clearly, this kind of happiness includes not getting what we don't want. And again, we feel this most intensely at those moments when we are relieved of adversity. Second, there is happiness connected with doing. The quality of our life depends much on the sense that we are engaged in useful, purposeful activity. This may come simply with being in a situation which we like, so then it is really just another case of getting what we want. But it isn't always so. Sometimes there is a real sense of happiness arising from the knowledge that we are doing the right thing in the right way. This kind of happiness is clearly distinct from simply getting what we like and can affect us deeply. So we have to include this in our consideration of what is happiness. Then comes what we call the happiness of being. If we are seriously interested in these teachings, we have already begun to perceive or understand that true happiness is not something we gain from outside, nor is it even something we become. True happiness, joy, in Sanskrit anandam, is intrinsic to our nature. It cannot come or go, or increase or decrease, and as such it is free of all fear, which is why it is the greatest happiness. Something in our heart believes this, and it can be confirmed in direct experience. In the light of the teachings, we will see that daily life, in fact, provides many intimations and indications of where true happiness lies. It is a partial glimpse of this happiness that makes deep sleep so sweet. The happiness of knowing that we're doing the right thing is the feeling of harmony with the reality in our own being and in all beings. And increasingly, we will realize that even the happiness of getting what we want does not arise from the object, but in the momentary freedom from want. And it is this momentary pause in the mental activity that gives us the sense of completeness and self-sufficiency, which is our true nature. What we call happiness, then, in truth, always arises from a realization of our own being. Our passing and partial experiences of happiness are thus a momentary thinning of the fog of irrelevant and distracting mental activity that seems to cut us off from what we really are. How then are we to make this experience complete and perfect while addressing and balancing all the competing demands of life in the world? It is here that the non-dual teachings are most transformative. They have much to say on the subject of desire and on giving up, or renunciation as it is sometimes called, and also on what has been called evenness of mind, or equanimity, in the face of life's ups and downs. When we understand these teachings fully, and we can only do this by putting them into practice, we find that they are not advising us to give up desire. They are showing us how to find happiness by resolving the roots of our sense of limitation and the anxiety that springs from it. Let's try to understand our situation. The real reason we cannot give up desires is because we cannot give up doing. Our body and mind belong to this world of time, space, matter and energy. And so we find ourselves inextricably being and doing amidst the flux of change. As conscious human beings, there is always some choice in what we do, and we act according to a range of motives at the root of which is the fundamental desire to be happy and avoid suffering. So giving up desire completely is no more possible than getting out of time and space and this changing world. What we need is a way of finding happiness amidst this flow of being and doing. And what usually prevents us from finding it is uncertainty and anxiety about what is going to happen. How does this come about? Typically, we make efforts and act with the aim of achieving some goal or result. And we feel that our well-being is dependent on that result. Anxiety is introduced because of uncertainty about the outcome, and unhappiness arises if it is not as we wished. How are we to free ourselves from these self-imposed limitations? The first step is to live fully in the present moment. Every instant is new. Thinking or worrying about what we did a moment ago and what might come of it only distracts us from what matters in this present moment. If something has been set in motion and it is time to turn to another task, then let's be focused on that. We can convince and remind ourselves that this is the best way of being and doing, and it will immediately relieve us of much anxiety and tension. And as our understanding of non-duality deepens through our ongoing inquiry and meditations, there is a further step we can take, which leads through the present moment to the realm of timeless truth. The best we can do with our attachment and concern about the results of actions is to give them up in the highest sense. We can recognize the fact that it is not in our power to control the outcome of events and consciously leave it to the power that does underlie all happenings. To put it another way, we can think of our efforts and actions as offerings to truth, to the supreme reality in us and in all. And when something is offered to that, we let go of our attachment and anxiety about it. In this way, what was a psychological burden is turned into a liberating affirmation. This giving, offering up, is not to a distant authority, but to the reality at the heart of our own being. By making our life a flow of action as self-giving, we can acknowledge the full force of all the desires at work in our being. The fundamental will to be free of limitations and suffering, and all the subsidiary forms that takes. We can act wholeheartedly according to what we feel is for the best right now. When we leave the results of our actions to the power that does in truth support all that comes into being, we can find happiness and freedom from anxiety in the here and now. In doing so, we affirm by our actions our growing realization that the experience of separation belongs to the level of appearances, and that our true self is the universal self of all beings. This freedom from anxiety and attachment makes the inner space and clarity which are ideal for meditation. Through meditation, we deepen the realization that the pure light of consciousness is unaffected and unbound by any of the experiences it illuminates.